So one, let me say that whole premise started with a long time ago. I was having a discussion about monogamy, and there are people out there who argue monogamy isn't natural. And I've always argued, no, monogamy actually is natural. If it was unnatural, then we wouldn't even be able to embrace it for a period of time. And when you examine relationships, you realize that most people are able to go a year, 2, 3, 5, whatever, being completely monogamous and being happy. But then at some point, there tends to be a fall off with most people. So I said, okay, the issue is not monogamy, it's maintaining monogamy. And the reason why we struggle to maintain monogamy is because we don't maintain who they fell in love with. And so essentially you have these situations where people in the beginning are bringing their best selves, or at least bringing a best version of something, okay? And we can't act like physical attraction is not a serious part of romantic relationships. Plain and simple. It is the final ingredient. Like if we didn't need physical attraction, there would be a lot of friends getting together right now.
Yes.
Okay, plain and simple. But the only thing that stops them is you're not attracted to them like that. So now, when you have physical attraction that helps bring two people together, and then you have one or more parties saying, well, it should not matter for me to have to maintain myself, what do we expect to see happen? And you'll hear a lot of these couples say, well, the flame is gone. In most of those cases, the flame left with the attraction. Plain and simple. But there was something in the beginning that made it good enough or strong for those people to be happy. And again, it's not just the physical part, it's the emotional part. It's how we talk to each other, how we treat each other. We have to get back to where things were good. So whenever someone says to me, how do we get the flame back? I say, what was in place when the flame was there? What was going on at the time when everything was feeling good? We have to identify all the factors. How were you two looking? How were you two treating each other? Everything. And now let's do our best to recreate that environment. And you will see a huge difference in your relationship.
I love that so much because, so I've been with my husband now for 20 years. We've been married for 18. And this is something we talk about a lot. We don't expect to have the same amount of fire or electricity that we did when we were first met. I think if you do a brain scan of someone that's just met, it looks like they're on drugs, right? Because they're so intoxicated with the love potion. Also want to add that there's something, as you were talking, I was like, you know what? Like if it was me and I was letting myself go, I don't think like for Tom, it would even be the visual change. It would be that would have a knock-on effect on how I show up every day. So I think I would be less confident. I think I would be more insecure. So it's not about just like if we're talking about looks for a second, where it's like people have just kind of let themselves go and they're like, I've been in a marriage for 20 years. He just needs to love me for who I am. I've never done that or said that ever, because it's not just about the eye attraction to the physicalities. It's how you show up. Tom loves it that I'm a bit of a badass and I don't take shit from him when he gives it to me, right? And so it's like, but now imagine I show up and I'm super insecure and I'm very very sensitive because I don't feel good about myself, right? So now it's not just, hey, I've changed physically. It's as an interaction where he likes to tease me and I'll give him one back, right? And we have like this banter. But now imagine he teases me and I get insulted and I'm all upset and I'm all sensitive. So it really does have this massive knock-on effect that people think is superficial, because it's like, oh, they don't have the six-pack abs that you fell in love with, let's say. And it's like, it's not about that. It's about everything that you just said and I just encapsulated. Like, it's so strong and people don't talk about it. People don't talk about it enough because they get defensive.
Absolutely. And that's such an awesome point, because it reminds me of another situation where this one woman, she did gain weight. Husband had no problem with it. But what would happen was she became insecure in the bedroom where she did not want to have sex because she didn't like the way she looked. And even though he would tell her, you're beautiful to me, I don't have any problems with this, she had an internal conflict. So like you said, it goes beyond the physical and the impact it will now have. And I don't think people understand how much when we deviate from that person, how much that now affects us in all areas of our life. And again, now, are you that energetic woman anymore? Are you positive anymore? And that's why it's about not just how you look, but how you treat them, how you talk to them, the energy that you bring to the table. All of that needs to be maintained if we want to see the relationship continue to thrive and get even better.
And I know, at least just from my husband, these are things that make him confident, right? Like that when he feels good about himself, and when he feels good about himself, he's in a good mood. So like everything has this knock-on effect that even in the reverse with the guy, I think that the insecurity would come out, and the, you know, oh, well, you looking at him because they're insecure about themselves.
Yes.
Or they're not satisfying their woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the last thing I want to add to that is there's a lot of people who say, well, I would never leave somebody if they let themselves go, physically or whatever. The problem is, yeah, you stayed, but you don't touch them the same. You don't talk to them the same anymore. You don't respect them the same anymore. Your treatment of them has deviated because the attraction, and again, especially for women, attraction encompasses more than physical. Like if you loved his ambitious drive and that ambitious drive is gone now, that's going to impact your attraction to him. And so staying with him, you don't get an award for staying if you can't still bring your best. If you're not going to still pour into your partner the same, then you can't think it's a good thing. Like I'll hear even men say, well, I wouldn't leave her. Okay, great, but will you still love her the same? And when I say love her, will you still pour into her the same? If you will, great. But if you're going to deviate from that, we still have a problem.
So true. But how do you then go about having that conversation? So let's say my audience is primarily female. So let's assume a female has a husband or a partner that hasn't got that drive anymore as part of what they fell in love with him. You know, he really loved, you know, going to the gym so he can pick her up and be strong for her or whatever it is. And slowly over time, he's let go of the drive. He's let go of his, whatever it is that we fell in love with him for. How do you even approach that in a way where that your partner can still feel loved, can still hear, hey, I love you, but everything's an improvement? Like, how do you even approach that? And then how do you help them, or in fact, do you help them?
Okay, so a few angles to cover. One, if you are not in a relationship yet, this is where you need to understand, establish this kind of dynamic as early as possible. We have to have discussions while we're getting to know each other and dating about how we're going to handle a scenario like this. I really believe people don't dive deep enough into each other and visualize, okay, how are things going to look if we're in a relationship together? How do we handle this kind of scenario? Let's talk about all these things, but let's establish that, hey, if we're unhappy with something, we should be allowed to talk to each other about it and not be offended. We have to be willing to listen to constructive criticism on both ends. Now, if you're already in the relationship and you have not established this, the best way, because there's no easy way, but the best effective way, in my opinion, would be via a letter. And the reason why is because if you come to them verbally, number one, verbal communication of deep concerns, issues, feelings tend to not go well. People get defensive, they deflect, you can get distracted, you may not get everything out. So much can go wrong that can derail the purpose of the conversation, all right? Some people end up talking for an hour and never got to the root of the issue that they were supposed to talk about, okay? Whereas via a letter, you're able to get everything out. You're able to check your tone to make sure that you are also adding love to the criticism. So you don't want to just say, listen, I think you've fallen off, and I don't like the direction this is going. You got to start with saying, listen, I love so-and-so. Like, it's a compliment sandwich, so to speak. And open yourself up to theirs as well. You got to come in, because the one thing I've learned with relationships is, or one of the things I've learned is that people don't like to be singled out. Mm-hmm. No one likes to be told they're the partner with the issues. They're the partner that fell off. So you want to be able to come in and recognize, okay, you know what? Maybe there's some things I need to improve, or I'm open to hearing any issues that you may have that you haven't expressed. But I want to make sure you understood where I stand and how I'm seeing things. All of these pieces of it will help soften it to where they can receive it more. All right. But I have to say this, and some people may not like this, but I'm going to have to say it anyway.
I love how honest you are. I even said it in my intro. That's like so exciting for me. I want the no BS, Stephan.
Absolutely. So I believe that in a lot of cases, I'm going to say most cases, where people let themselves go, again, whether it's in treatment, physically, whatever, and especially if they know it's an issue for their partner, or more specifically when they know it's an issue or having an impact, it's a sign that you're just not in love with that person. It's a sign that there may not be a connection there. And the reason why I say that is because of this. You find a woman, and let's please understand the difference between going through a rough patch versus we just don't care, and it's probably been years, all right, and we're not doing anything about this. Women who are into their man want to look good for that man. And if how they're looking or letting themselves go is having an impact on this man that they value so much, they'll want to do something about it. Many women, when they don't care, is because they don't look at him like that. It's the same way with men, where when a man's with a woman he loves, he's inspired. There's this natural inspiration, this fire that's in you because of this woman, where you want to go harder for her. You want to accomplish more also for her. She is part of your drive, okay? When that's non-existent, then I do have to question, were you really in love? Now, again, nothing's 100%. There's exceptions to every rule. But from the situations I've seen, it's rare to find a couple who lets themselves go, doesn't care, know it's having an impact on the relationship, and the relationship is not healthy and happy, but yet you're telling me you guys are in love with each other and there's a connection.
Oh, Stephan, okay, so I'm going to push back here.
All right.
But why do you think that that's the case? Because for me, I would actually go to, there's something going on with them. They're insecure. They're losing their self-esteem. They're losing their confidence, and things are happening to them where they're not prioritizing it. And then it becomes I'm struggling right now, and so they just need to love me, right? They need to love me for how I am. But it's interesting that you perceive it as it's about them versus about the person that's going through the emotion.
So this is why I want to make sure I said there's a difference between going through that rough period, which I do think people go through. Like, we all go through moments where we may be a little depressed. We may have lost motivation. We don't have the same energy. We're going through some things. I think all of that is understandable. And that's why I wanted to make sure I added like an example where it may be years, because people who are truly into each other, who love each other, we're going to have our rough patches, but we're going to be able to get through that and get to something better. When you've remained in that and there's no desire to push past that, there's no attempt to work through this, that to me says, no, this is not struggle. This is no motivation whatsoever from the fact that this person doesn't inspire you. And consider it like this. To a woman, it's like, well, why should I go ahead and hit the gym for a man who doesn't even listen? A man who doesn't even talk to me anymore, who doesn't treat me the same. So again, his lack of pouring into you keeps you unmotivated. All right. Same way I've seen some men who feel like, well, why should I do anything about it? She doesn't have sex with me anyway. She doesn't listen to what I say. I don't get any respect in this house. Why should I be better for her? But again, so that speaks to, is there really love here? And to be honest with you, I want to say this. The majority of people are not with the person they most love. The majority of people are not with the person they have a connection with. So it's not surprising to me when I see this dynamic happen all the time. And again, show me two people who have a connection. Show me two people who truly love each other. And I'll show you two people who at some point will fight through and get back on track. If not even not fall completely off track when it comes to maintaining themselves for their partner. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have a different fuel that allows them to thrive and push past. Whereas when that connection's not there, it's like, man, forget them. I don't care.
God, I love how raw you are about your feedback, because it really, like, I just want to know the truth, right? Once we know the truth, then we can assess. But a lot of people do, they protect their own emotions because they don't want to feel badly about themselves. And for me, I always go back to, what's the goal? Like, what's the goal in my relationship? Is the goal for me to always feel great, or is the goal for us to always get through issues and keep connecting? Because let me tell you, I don't know any relationship where you have that real talk and you always feel great. Like, you don't feel great because you're assessing the things that you may have done wrong, the things that you've maybe let go of. And I made it a point maybe about 5 years ago that I turned to my husband and we made this list of questions. When we'd go on vacation, we'd just ask each other a bunch of questions. And there was one question that I found so powerful for myself. And I asked him this on Valentine's Day. In fact, I said, what's the thing that I used to do for you that I've stopped that you wish I started doing again?
That's an awesome question.
Now, here's the thing. He's going to say things that may upset me, right? It's like, oh, you used to do, right? Like, you used to do this for me and you used to do this for me. And so in going into that, I said to myself, in asking this question, I need to be very open to the answer because it may upset me. Okay, well, if it upsets me, then why am I asking the question? I'm doing it because my goal is to make sure that I have a long lasting, happy, successful relationship. And so once I've kind of told myself why I'm doing it, I then, my guard gets down. And then also, like you said, it gives me an opportunity for him to then ask me. So I've asked him and he's like, okay, babe, what's the thing that you wish I now start doing? And because I've left myself open to that, I now have the space to be able to tell him.
Absolutely. And you see how when him now putting himself out there in the same way, like, that makes things so much easier. When both parties are willing to be open to the criticism, that makes both parties more receptive to it. And it helps. No one wants to be the only one saying, well, you're wrong, you need to do this, and then we end it there. It's like, no, let's share with each other what we can be doing better, how we can be making each other happier. That should always be the goal. And I honestly think, like, people should have relationship checkups. So, you said you do it on vacations, whether it be maybe once every 3 months or 6 months or once a year. At some point, we need to sit down and have an understanding that this is the day that we sit down and get everything out. What's missing? What needs to return? What needs to be adjusted? If we kept doing that, I really believe you would see more relationships succeed.
Stephan, I love that idea. There should be like a plan of like, all right, on this day, every 6 months, because if you set it up ahead of time when there's no problem, now there's not that like, oh God, he wants to talk to me. What's wrong? Oh my God, yes. Right? Like that panic. So if you just go every 6 months, we agree we're going to have a meeting and we're going to sit down, kind of like what you do with the business, right? You go over the P&L, you go over the data, you see what's working, you see what doesn't. I love this idea.
And here's the other part of that, psychologically, that happens. You know how at work, if you know your review is coming up, you tighten up because you don't want to walk into that review knowing you have things that you've been missing. So if we know we have the relationship checkup coming up, people will start to naturally tighten up because nobody wants to come in being the one who wasn't doing their job. So it has a positive impact on various levels.
Oh my God, I love that so much. That was hilarious. And there's one thing actually that I also want to touch upon that you said is when I take care of myself, when I put on my knee-high boots and when I put on lacy underwear, I feel a different way. And so I do it for myself, right? Like I obviously do it because I like the way my husband looks at me, when I'm wearing that outfit, but it goes back into once I start to go, what makes me feel good? And then I show up by feeling good, then it has that knock-on effect. So not just thinking I'm dressing this way for him. It's like I'm dressing this way for me to feel good about myself so that then we can get together.
And you know what? And I'm glad you brought that up because that is a very important part. And this is where I think it kind of goes with the connection in the sense that this is where people have to be their true selves. So I'll use me, for example. I like a woman that likes to look good. I've come to the realization that not every woman cares to have to do the whole dressing up and nails or whatever. Some women don't care for that. That's not their thing. And so now, if we get together not being honest about who we are and what we like, we have this mismatch to where now I'm trying to get you to dress up and that's not really what makes you feel good. However, if we have that connection, or we're on the same page, and now you enjoy looking good, I enjoy you looking good. Now it's easy, because when you make yourself look good for you, I still benefit, because we're on the same page here. We wanted the same things, and I think this is where people have to recognize, okay, yes, we have to make sure we are creating that happiness within us, because that's what's going to pour out to our partners and to our lives. But we also want to make sure that we're with partners that align with us, all right, that embrace what we embrace. So now, to maintain and sustain those things, as we talked about earlier, maintain the person they fell in love with becomes so much easier, because I love that person too. So the person you love, I love. Okay, now we're good. But if I don't love being this person, but you want me to be that, now we have this huge disconnect, and things won't work in the long run.
Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. Peace is something that men crave. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of men aren't getting it. A lot of men are in a relationship with a woman who may be a good woman, quote unquote, but that relationship is not